And hello, this is the Peach Baskets Podcast. Mike Lischio Jr., Mike Lischio III, back for show number 2. Michael, we're back at it again.
Yes, sir. We're back, ready to talk about it this week.
A little later in the week this week because there was a lot of action that happened Wednesday. We're recording this Thursday night, and probably we'll record on Thursday next week because there is a big early weekday slate. So we'll probably continue to record and premiere these on Friday, at least until we get to conference season. Then I'll be back to probably on Tuesday at that point. But let's jump right in. It's been a very
Yes, sir.
interesting couple weeks as we were in the Peach Belt season. And
Oh,
let's go. We'll
absolutely.
pull up the standings here. Let's take a look and tell me right now. We got the standings up. Obviously, technically, everybody's tied for first because no conference games have been played. Conference games in about a little over 2 weeks. But
Yeah.
when you look at these teams and how they've started, what jumps out to you?
I mean, the elephant in the room is obviously Augusta. They were originally picked second in the conference, and they've started 0-5, and they've only had one game that's been within 10 points, and that was against Virginia Wesleyan, and that was a 1-point game.
Yeah, they've been off to a tough start. They're 0-5 for the first time since 1984 when they started 0-11. Two of those five, though, were against South Carolina and Clemson. And just to put in perspective, in 1984, the beginning of the 1984 season, I was just 3 years old. So that's how long it's been. But Dip Metris is the dean of Peach Belt Conference coaches for a reason. This was long before him that last time they started 0-5. But
You were
even
telling me a
that
funny
year,
story about it earlier.
yeah. So the thing is that was interesting about them starting 0-5 is that they actually finished the season 8-20 after starting. They started 0-5, they continued to 0-11, and then finished 8-9 the rest of the way. So they kind of righted the ship. And I don't expect Augusta to stay in the cellar for long, but they've got to do better. They struggled to replace BD and Champion on the outside. Now, Frank Champion's hard to replace. There's no doubt about that. But right now, Dimitri Gardner, who's second in the conference in scoring, he's doing it all by himself. He needs to get some help.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, he just doesn't have any support.
They lost to Fayetteville State last night, and they were outscored. They outscored them 46-30 in the paint, but that just magnifies that they have no shooting on the outside. They're sloppy with the ball. They're last in the conference in turnover margin. They've
Mm-hmm.
really struggled. And again, we talked about it last week. They had a lot of losses, but it's been a slow start for Augusta. But the great thing about college basketball is you can start 0-5, but once you get to that conference season, which usually is in January, but there is a week of conference games, as we said, in 2 weeks, you can get right. And as long as you get right by March, you can make a run in the conference tournament and you can still find your way into the dance. But if Augusta keeps going the way they're going, they're going to have to go and win the conference tournament.
Oh, yeah. I mean, look at Flagler last year. They started very slow in the conference tournament, or not in conference tournament, in the
Regular
season,
season,
and they
yeah.
made it all the way to the finals of the conference tournament. And that's kind of what Augusta needs to do this year.
And as you know, we are huge Flagler College fans. Our guy Blake Selland will join us a little bit later in the podcast. But that's exactly what happened to Flagler last year was that they got off to that slow start, and it's ultimately what kept them out of the tournament. They were kind of a bubble team. I think they were the first team out in the Southeast Regional. So to your point, that is something to keep an eye on. Another thing to keep an eye on is this is the preseason standings as they were predicted by the voters. And I talked about this last week. Those things aren't always right and rarely ever are. But Lander's playing some good basketball. They've done very well this year to get started. But Augusta has struggled. North Georgia, they had a loss last week, but they're 6-1. They're still number 11 in the country. Aiken's number 15 in the country. So far, nothing has gone the way it would, but we were kind of adamant that it wouldn't be that way. So,
Yeah.
not surprised there. Let's jump in and we'll talk about. There's a lot of games yesterday. We'll go through some of those games and kind of get everybody caught up. Then we'll have Blake Selland on and we'll talk about what's coming up next week in the Peach Belt Conference. You got one really big day on Tuesday. It goes away for the holiday, but jump in and start with the player of the week, and it's Tim Hall from Georgia Southwestern. And let me tell you, Tim Hall has had a week.
Yeah, he has. Just a baller.
And he really has been. And this is the 3 games that got him player of the week for the Peach Belt Conference. He had 10 points and 13 boards against West Florida, 19 and 15 against Mount Olive, 18 and 18 against Barton. 18 and
That's
18.
that's just insane to do. And he's done it so consistently this year, which is the craziest part about it.
Yep, he is. He averaged for the week 15.7 points, 15.3 boards. He's second in the conference in rebounding, eighth in and field goal percentage. He's eighth in the nation in rebounding right now, eighth in the entire nation. There's
That's
286 teams
crazy.
in Division Two.
He is just tearing it up this year.
So congratulations to Tim Hall. It's also worth noting that not only Caden Charles last week from North Georgia, not only was he the Peach Belt Player of the Week, but he was also the NCAA Player of the Week as well. So let's jump into Wednesday, and we'll start right there with Wednesday's scores. We'll start with that Georgia Southwestern game against an West Alabama team that's in the top 10 in the nation in scoring defense, but this time it was Georgia Southwestern's defense. They held West Alabama to 36.5% shooting. We're going to talk about this name a couple times tonight, but it was a good night to be Josiah Shackelford last night.
Yeah,
and
it
we'll
was.
explain why that's a big deal. But Josiah Shackelford of Georgia Southwestern, he hit the game-winning layup at about a minute 40 left, had 21 points, 12 rebounds on 8 of 13 shooting, and he is off to a red hot start. He's first in the conference in blocks, third in rebounds. He's seventh in the nation in double doubles, tied with Tim Hall, who I failed to mention is in the top 10 in the nation in double doubles, and sixth in the nation in field goals made. So Josiah Shackelford's been very good. Larson Neals had 18 points. He's been shooting the ball very well, 48% from three and 51%, which is insane for a guard.
That's just ridiculous, honestly, for a guard to be playing as he is this year. That's just a level of consistency and grit that you don't find much out of
And
players.
we talked about this Georgia Southwestern team being a team that might be able to surprise some people. So we'll see if they can keep that going. December 7th, they will have their conference opener right here in St. Augustine. So we'll see them in a couple of weeks. Now, moving on to that Flagler game. Flagler played Lynn University, made the trip up from South Florida last night. And the Saints have put on a show. We are obviously slightly biased, I know. They shot 54% from the field. Remember how I said it was good to be Josiah Shackelford? Well, Flagler's Josiah Shackelford had 24 points on 7 on 11 shooting. But to me, Michael, the story of the Saints early on, they've been balanced. They've got guys who are contributing all different roles. But it really starts with the man in the middle, as Mike Adams calls him, Jalen Jordan.
Jalen Jordan, baby. Had 19 and 13 last night. He is averaging this year. He is averaging 18 and 12. 18 and 12, yeah. And
he's among the top 10 in scoring in the Peach Belt Conference. He's the leading rebounder. I've got a stat for you. I don't know if you knew this or not. He leads the nation in double doubles. He's been
I
a
did
double
not
doubles
know that,
machine.
but I am not surprised. He's had a double-double in every single game that they've played this season.
And the Saints, they're 4-1. They are first in the conference in opponents rebounding, so they've allowed the least amount of opponents rebounds. They're 17th in the nation in scoring, 16th in 3-point percentage, second in the conference in 3-point play 3-pointers a game. And part of that is guys like Matt Hrdlicka. We talked about him last week coming over from UNF. We know our guy Matt Driscoll loves shooters, and Max Hrdlicka is no different. But they also played a little defense against Lynn, holding them to 35 points in the second half. And it really feels like this Blake Selland team is starting to gel.
Yeah, it definitely does. They're starting to find their footsteps, and just everyone's getting touches. Everyone's making shots, which is the big thing. And they're just coming together really well.
And they're getting stops, and Jalen Jordan has made his presence known. Jalen Jordan might be a sleeper pick for PBC Player of the Year. We'll talk about some other guys who are doing some great things. But I think while we're talking about Flagler, that would be a good time to bring in our friend who joined us earlier this week for an interview, and that's Saints coach Blake Selland. Tonight is Flagler Coach Blake Selland. Coach, thank you for joining us tonight.
Awesome. Thank you guys for having me. It's going to be a great night.
Well, you know how much we love the Flagler basketball program, so we really appreciate having you on the show.
We appreciate the support a lot. Thank you.
So let's start at the beginning. What brought you to Flagler as an assistant coach?
Yeah, so Chad Warner, one of my best friends and biggest mentor. I was lucky enough to play for him for 4 years up at Shorter University, and I was just this. Did I lose you guys, or am I still good?
No, you're there. You're there. Sorry.
Awesome. No, you're good. You're good. But yeah, so Chad was the head coach up at Shorter, and I was looking to play in college, and I was able to get on the JV program up at Shorter and kind of just work my way to on the varsity there. And I'll never forget, it was my freshman year, and I was kind of like a manager / I was playing on the JV team, but for the varsity team, we're on the bus. We're driving back from one of the first trips, and he's sitting at the front of the bus. He goes, "Have you ever thought about coaching?" I said, "No." I said, "My goal is to own my own Chick-fil-A." He goes, "Well, I think you'd be a pretty good coach." And I'm like, "Well, I appreciate it, but I'm going to go own my own Chick-fil-A when I get done with college." And he's like, "Okay." And then fast forward, the year, and the next year, I just, I love basketball, and it's hard to leave the gym. And then had an opportunity to, be a GA when I was done. And Coach Warner got out of coaching for a year, which, I was planning on working for him, but I ended up working for a guy named Tyler Murray, who is one of Coach Warner's best friends, and Coach Warner actually coached him as well, and who's now the associate head coach at Lipscomb. And I got to know, so I worked for Tyler for 2 years, and then when Chad got the Flagler job, I'll never forget, he sent me a picture one day, and I knew nothing about St. Augustine, heard of Flagler, never seen it, didn't know where it was located. He sent me a picture of Ponce. And I'm like, "Oh, that's awesome. Are you and your wife on vacation? Like, that's a nice hotel." And he's like, "No, that's a college. And I'm interviewing for the job tomorrow." And I'm like, "Oh my heavens. If I get it, do you want to come?" And I'm like, "Do I want to come?" Like, absolutely. So then long story short, he got a job. He drove up to Rome maybe a week or two later. We did an interview at his church there in Rome. And then I was able to come there, to come down to Flagler then, and been very fortunate. If it wasn't for him and Kip Owens, who's also one of my best friends, I wouldn't be sitting here today. But that's how I got down here, and and then the community here and the support's just been amazing ever since.
And when you got here, there was a lot of work to do. There was a lot that had to be done. The program had transitioned to Division II a few years before, but it had been slow going. And how did you and Coach Warner and Kip, how did you guys turn this program around so quickly?
Well, it takes time and everything. And I mean, Bo Clark is an unbelievable basketball coach, and he's won way more games than I ever will. And he did an unbelievable job here. And, so, we just had to change up some things. It's not like they had bad players or anything. They had unbelievable kids and some good players. And, we just really hit the ground recruiting really, really hard, and really just trying to get the pieces that fit Flagler, and how can a player succeed, one, in the classroom at Flagler, succeed in the community of Flagler, and then succeed on the court. Because, Flagler it's a tough academic school. And obviously, that's the number one thing is education. And we want these guys to get a good education. So you have to go after the right type of kids that are going to be able to succeed here first in the classroom, and then, onto the court. And luckily, it took us some years. I thought we did a good job signing our first class, and we signed some elite human beings and some good basketball players. And we signed a lot of young guys, our first class, a lot of freshmen like Getty Uarzapaitis and Lawrence Slim and Logan Swackhammer, and those guys eventually, got it. We ended up losing Getty to the transfer portal. That was kind of how that started happening. Good players at our level would transfer up. But, we really just tried to hit the ground recruiting kids that really fit Flagler academically and the culture that Flagler already had, and then tough, good basketball players. And then, once we started doing that, and the transfer portals hit, you sign a kid like Derek Ellis Jr., who played for an Elite Eight, won a conference championship. You get a player like him was very special, and signed some other Division I transfers. And then, you get lucky and get a kid like Jay Ziclotti, and next thing you know, you have some really, really good guards, in the mix, and some tough kids and just elite human beings. So it's like, it takes time, and, you got to find your niche, and I think every program, nowadays with the transfer portal, you can turn it over in a year, but, we like to find our niche, and it goes back to the type of kids we want to get here at Flagler that are going to fit, first off, Flagler College. Like, they have to fit Flagler College or it won't work here. And then, fit us coaches as for a program, and the relationships that we like with them. And so we just really hit the ground recruiting and kind of came up with our mold and found our niche, and, have kind of tried taking off with it. And I'm still kind of copying, Coach Warner on how he did things. And Kip was a huge asset, just on everything. And if it wasn't for those, especially if it wasn't for Chad, the program wouldn't be where it is. I'm just trying to keep it afloat for both of them. So,
was it? Go ahead, Mike.
Sorry. You mentioned the guys like Jay Zaglotti, Malik Bryant, all those guys that are playing overseas. Do you still talk to them and still coach them up?
Yeah, I don't know about coaching maybe a little bit, but more encouragement. Just because I know it's hard. I try to put myself in their shoes. Like, imagine going to another country right now and people don't speak your language and playing and everything like that. So it's funny. I texted Malik the other day. I saw they had their game, and I think he said, I played bad. And I was like, well, man, you're so athletic. I said, it starts on defense. I'm like, get a couple steals early on. No one can stop you in transition. And then he texted me back and, was like, Coach, I'm getting it now. And I think they won 2 of their last 3 games. And Jazik as well. Jazik will randomly just FaceTime me out of nowhere and puts a smile on my face. That kid's just a elite human being and an awesome kid. But yeah, I tell you, Jazik's over there killing it. He's engaged. I think he's engaged or he got married now. And I know they're going to do their wedding soon and all that here. But yeah, he's, I try to just, give them encouragement and tell them how proud I am of them. System over there and everything like that. But I know it's just hard to go overseas and play. So I just try my best to just give those guys encouragement and make sure that they're being taken care of and doing well over there.
Now, to that end, you talked about Getty going to Georgia's, I believe it was Georgia Southern, right?
Yep.
I think that's where he ended up. And then, Jalen Barr and Spencer Bain both graduated this year and went on. Jalen to Iona, Spencer Bain to Kansas State.
Yep.
We just talked about Jazik and Malik playing overseas. What's that say for the program that these kids are coming to Flagler and then they're going to the next level? They're going to Division I schools. They're going and playing professionally. What does that say for how far this program's come?
Well, no, it's awesome. I mean, it's a credit to them. At the end of the day, they're just buying into a culture and learning from us and everything like that. And I want the best fit for everyone. And I think in today's world, if a kid wants to leave, I sometimes you hate it for your program, but if that's what they want, I'm going to be their number one supporter. And having Jazik and Malik stay, which was, it's awesome. They both. I mean, I think in today's world, anyone can leave at any time when the season's over. So that was pretty awesome. And Jalen Barr and Spencer Bain are 2 guys that played here 4 years, kind of did their will here. And that was JB, that was my goal for JB the entire time. When Kip and I got, appointed, and I'll never forget meeting with JB because people started right when Chad left, people were already in his ear about, hey, you need to leave. And he was like, no, I'm staying put. And, we had a plan of, hey, JB, you're going to come back, be defensive player of the year, and then we're going to go get you Division I. Well, that didn't happen with his ACL, but then sure enough, it was just a year behind, and now he's up at Iona, and I know those coaches pretty well up there, and they love him. And Spencer Bain, he was everything. He's just an awesome kid, great family, really just bought into the culture here. And same thing. He easily could have came back, and we talked about it, him and I think he thought about it for a couple of days. But when you have an opportunity to go play for a Division I, especially a high major like that, and continue to be a great teammate and great competitor like we talk about, he jumped all over that, and I'm really excited for him. I actually talked to him the other day as well and making sure they're doing well. JB FaceTimed me the other day before their game, and it was Friday night. My wife and I, we had the Furman game on watching Chad and Kip. We had the Iona game on watching JB, and on my laptop I was watching, I think Edward Waters and someone else in our league. So it was a basketball night in the Selland's house that night.
I think Jalen Barr, I want to talk about Jalen Barr for a minute because we love Jalen Barr so much. And I think Jalen is everything good about your program. And he's a tenacious player. He's a hard worker, not only on the court, but in the classroom. I know the year he hurt his ACL, I remember he came out to softball and I was talking to him and he says, well, I'm taking 6 classes right now. And I was like, you know, most guys would take it easy, but, you know, he approaches everything in life that way. And I would think that's the type of player you're looking for.
Absolutely. You know, when JB first got here, he was not perfect. And, you know, and none of these kids are. Like, they're just never going to be perfect throughout the year. And but I was so proud of JB because he really bought into what Coach Warner, myself and Kip were talking about. And, I mean, his first couple months, I mean, nothing against it. You know, he wasn't starting for us. We knew he'd be good, but he wasn't starting. He wasn't practicing hard. He'd kind of show up some days. He'd show up late to the bus. He'd show up late. You know, he'd come walking out on practice with a minute on the clock before practice. He overslept a couple practices. So it was really cool to see the growth of him and him really change to, you know, become a big leader and a big focal point. He always had the gifts, but he really just bought into, you know, how we do things and what we're trying to do. And it was just so awesome to see. And I think a big impact on him was Jay Ziglotti. I mean, one of the best leaders I've ever been around, really, you know, helped Jay-Zick out or helped Jalen out a ton. But I'm so proud of JB because how all these kids are. They come here and they're not perfect. They got to learn and they got to grow, and they're going to have growing pains. As JB didn't start the first 6 games of the year for us, his first year here, and he was livid. And we kept telling him, hey, man, you got to practice hard. It's all about practice and how you build your habits. And next thing you know, his habits just started getting better and better. And you're like, holy moly, here he comes. And you watched him just soar. And I never had that in the game. And, yeah, to see him graduate, man, one of the coolest moments for me, I'll never forget when I recruited Derek Ellis. You know, Derek Ellis was coming from an Elite 8. And I told Derek, I said, there's 2 things I want. Or I was like, there's one thing I want. I want a picture with you holding that region trophy one year. And in my office on my door, I have that picture of me and Derek. But one of my other favorite photos is me and him with his diploma. It was really cool to see all those kids. I mean, a kid like Derek, I would have never thought would graduate. And, you know, JB as well, to take 6 classes and graduate. And now he's working on a master's is just unbelievable. So that's another awesome thing about all those kids. They all graduated, which is so awesome.
Obviously, last year, very successful year, made it to the conference finals. Not a lot of people expected that. How did you kind of deal with that negativity with your players?
Yeah, you know, I mean, you know, like I said, you had a good bit of returning core, and which is always good when you return some really good pieces. And, you know, a lot of people, I think, you know, Jalen Barr, too, was out all year. They really didn't know what he was going to do. And, you know, he took a whole year off from playing and tore his ACL so bad. You know, and we returned some really good pieces from a year. I thought the year before the Peach Belt was so good the past 2 years. It's just always going to be good. So, you know, I thought our guys they stayed in their head space and kept working and just fighting every day. And we tried not listening to that outside noise. You know, we started out 1-3. It wasn't a great start. I knew we were talented. And we just kept working and kept growing. And that's what's going to happen throughout. You're going to have growing pains, but the thing about the Peach Belt is I think every year no one really knows who's going to be good. And I think that's just the norm in college basketball now is everyone – I think you have an idea of kind of who's going to be good. But at the end of the day, the way this transfer portal goes, you can go get a whole new team and win the conference next year. So, you know, it was great to show everyone kind of where we are and we hope to be. You know, we're the only Peach Belt team and, you know, to play 3 of the last 4 Peach Belt conference championships, which is pretty cool, you know, for us as we played in 3 of the last championships in the Peach Belt. Hopefully we can go 4 out of 5 this year, you know, which would be cool. So our goal is just to continue to, you know, do the right thing. And, you know, when the game time comes, hopefully we get ready and go out there and play well.
Now, turning to this year's team, one of the guys who I think has come a long way from when he arrived in St. Augustine is Jax Bachnight. He seems to have put in the work. How would you describe his growth in the program?
Yeah, no, Jax is still growing today. I mean, he is. I'll never forget when he came in as a true freshman. He he had unbelievable leaders and people around him. I mean, Jazik was on that team. Curtis Lewis was on that team. Chris Metzger, like some really good, just great human beings, great basketball players. And all three of those guys are just succeeding in life at a high level. So, that's so great. And you can keep throwing Tyler Collier out there. Like, he's just been around so many great people. So it's been so awesome to see. And like I said, none of these kids are perfect. He has some growing pains, but it's been really awesome. I mean, I'm so proud of that kid and where he's came and where he's come from. And he's been great so far, and I expect him to continue to be good. And he's taken on a leadership role, and he's ready for it. A basketball role, he's ready for it. And it's been really, really fun to see him. I mean, that's what this whole thing's about. At the end of the day, we love signing transfers because we're going to have to, but I love also getting high school kids, and each year we bring in one or two that's really going to help our program, and just seeing them grow each year is really, really cool for me. And everything. But no, I love Jax, and he's been a joy around having this year, and the best is yet to come for him.
Now, Destin Clark is taking on a greater role for the team, and he makes it tough on opponents. How does he do that?
Yeah, no, Destin's also same thing, transferred in from Wingate from us. Great talent, great kid, and had a great year last year. Was second team all conference, got hurt late in the year, and yeah, he's a mismatch nightmare down there. And it's the same thing. We're working on his habits. When he has really good habits, no one can stop him. And that's one thing as I really like his growth. So far this preseason, he's owned a lot of mistakes. That's what we talk about. There's no need to blame others. There's no need to do this and that. Just when we make a mistake, we own it, we move on, and it's going to help us in basketball, and it's going to help us in life. So he's really taken a big stand in that. And we're still working through that, because when his head's right, he's a first-team all-conference player, and I think we can win a championship with him. And he's gonna continue to be great for us. But yeah, he's a force down there. He's a great kid. I love him and his family. It's been fun to have, and I'm glad we still get him for a whole nother year, the rest of this year and everything. But yeah, he's a force down low, and just an awesome kid.
One of these other forces down low is Jalen Jordan. He had some big shoes to fill, replacing Jalen Barr, and it seems like he is transitioned seamlessly to the program. He's been a double machine for you guys. How has he been able to adjust?
Yeah, Jalen, same thing. The thing I love about Jalen is he knows the Peach Belt really well. Transferred from Georgia Southwestern. He's played in the league. He's gone up against, he started every game late in the year last year for Georgia Southwestern, was one of their key pieces, and defended Frank champion at times last year, and was really proud. And when he went in the portal, that was a guy we eyed pretty hard, and everything. And he's from Jacksonville, and we knew some of his family, and we're able to get there. And yeah, he's same thing. He's learning. He's got a big role in the way we play our offense. But yeah, he's just the thing about Jalen. I think if both of you went up and talked to him right now, you'd think he's the quietest kid. But once you really get to know him, he'll come and start laughing and talking. And I mean, every morning he comes to my office and grabs a Powerade and just sits and talks for 10 or 15 minutes. And I love it because he's a quiet kid, but man, he's been really good for us, and he's awesome. He's a Peach Belt force. He's the perfect Division II player for us, and we're very happy we have him.
Now, as we wrap up here, I want to ask you, first of all, how far do you think this team can go this year?
Yeah, I think, I hope we can go as maybe a little further than we did last year. And, I think my biggest thing with our teams is, we have to learn throughout the year. I mean, yeah, we started out 3-0 and then had a tough loss last week to Embry-Riddle, but we haven't done a thing yet. So, we got to learn. I mean, we're supposed to win some of these home games, which is good, but I just want us to continue to keep learning. And when we make a mistake, let's learn from that mistake to where that doesn't happen again for us, and kind of see where the chips fall come February, March. But I mean, we have the pieces, the guys' mindsets. I love that. Our mindsets, are really good. The thing that's great is, Jax Bachnight. We have multiple guys. Jackson Hoku, Fisher have played in NCAA tournaments. Destin Destin Clark's played in a championship game. Mason Manning, Boom Reeves played in championship games. So we have a good bit of core that have seen what it looks like, and we're just trying to gel. Like I said, we've only had three and a half months of practice and playing. So I told the team today, I'm like, you know what? mistakes are going to happen today. Mistakes are going to happen tomorrow. We're just continuing to work for that February, March when those mistakes are going to be a lot shorter. So, I don't know exactly where we're going to be, but I know this: we'll be playing. We're going to be playing good ball come February, March, and try to make another big run at a tourney, or try to hold a trophy up at the end of the year. But right now, it's just a little too early to tell. Not trying to get over our head, but we got a long way to go, and we got to keep working hard to try to get there.
And the last question: we get to live in a pretty special part of the world. What do you love about St. Augustine?
Yeah, no, this place is amazing, man. My wife and I, we have a 9-month-old son who we absolutely love it here, and we can't wait for him to grow up and live here. But it's really, I mean, one, the weather's amazing. I will say this: I grew up in Charlotte, where it's not too cold, but I am soft now. When the weather gets cold, I'm very soft, and I hate that. But the people, the drive-in every day. I mean, I drive and I see water every day on my drive-in. I see blue sky every day. To work in an athletic department like Flagler and a college, like, it goes back to how we recruit. Like, the culture here, like, we want those type of kids that fit Flagler, and yeah, just the people in St. Augustine. Like, I'm super close with all my neighbors. Everyone is so nice. You go downtown, the support's amazing, and yeah, it's a beautiful place. They used to say, y'all have been here a lot longer than me, but they used to say it's a hidden gem, and now it's getting crazy. And, I've been here 9 years now, and when I first got here, it's more and more buildings, and I think it's only going to get bigger and wilder here. But we do love it here. So I'm sure you guys have some of the same feelings as I do.
Absolutely, Coach. We appreciate you joining us tonight. Thank you so much.
Absolutely, I appreciate you guys, and y'all have a great night. Hope to see you soon.
Thanks,
Yes,
Coach.
sir.
So that was Coach Blake Selland, and of course, we love Blake. He's always been super supportive of us, and always been welcoming to us, and we really appreciate him joining. One thing I wanted to talk about before we move on, and I correct one of my snafus from early in the show, is Jack Spocknight. We talked about that on the interview and the growth of Jack Spocknight. He's currently the leading three-point shooter in the Peach Belt Conference. He's second in assists. Jack Spocknight has really stepped up for this Flagler team, who, by the way, not only leads the conference in three-point shooting, is also the best three-point defensive team in the conference. But Jack Spocknight, talk about him, because I know you've been a fan from day one.
Oh, I've always believed in him, even back in those 2021, 2022 teams where he was an end-of-the-bench guy. Just watching the way he acted and just how supportive he was of his teammates, that's what made me really fall in love with him. And then to just see his progression from then and to now being one of the best players in the conference, it's just awesome to see.
And, I think the addition of Hoku Fisher is going to be a big deal for them. He had a double-double last night, 10 points, 10 assists. He also is third in the conference in assists. So let's keep going through these games here. I want to apologize. I said Frank Champion was at Augusta. He was at North Georgia. I knew he was at a team in blue and always kick butt. So I apologize for that. I'm going to blame it on Thursday. I always say Thursday is the worst day of the week. It's always a crazy day for me in the day job. And I'm going to blame it on that, which is no excuse, but still. North Georgia, number 11 in the country, big win against Converse last night. They shut them down in the second half.
Oh, yeah, they did.
6 for 30 shooting, they held the Valkyries to. By the way, what do you think of the Valkyries as a nickname? I know you're a big fan.
I love it. New WNBA teams named the Valkyries, obviously Converse. Just a great name, in my opinion.
And what North Georgia is doing this year is they're winning with defense. They scored 84 points. That's a good number, but they're first in scoring defense, first in opponent's field goal shooting. Caden Charles is leading the conference in scoring. Zach Hawkinson has been incredible. He had 21 and 11 last night. He's fourth in the conference in rebounds. They get after the boards, and what you're seeing this year from the Peach Belt is it's more of an inside-out league. You got a lot of teams dominating in the paint. Last night they out-rebounded Converse 46-26.
Yeah, that's been their big strength all year, is just cleaning up on the glass, and especially with Zach Hawkinson, who, like you said, had 11 last night. He is just tearing it up. He's locked them down too. He
9
had
of
a
13
block
shooting too.
Yeah, he's just great.
Now, moving on to Aiken, who's up to 15th in the country after a 1 point win against Emmanuel. They have Jalen McCoy, somebody who is again on the short list for me of Peach Belt Player of the Year competition. He had a 3 point play with 26 seconds left to put Aiken out in front, 20 points, 7 rebounds. He's averaging 23 points a game, leads the PBC. He's 22nd in the nation in scoring, but he's not doing it all well alone. Rajon Blackwell has played well. Davion Cunningham has played well. They're first in offensive rebounds. The one thing that concerns me, and it wasn't a problem last night, but Aiken, in a close game, these are things that are going to come back to haunt you. They're dead last in the conference free throw shooting. They shoot just 62% from the line, and down the stretch, that can hurt you.
Oh yeah. I mean, they shot 66% last night, 8 for 12, which on 8 for 12 isn't necessarily bad, but 66% it's not good.
It's not great, but it's good enough, I guess, but that's something that teams tend to get better with as the season goes on as well. But again, we talked about it being a league that's an inside out league. They are first in the conference in blocks and 19th in the nation. And now we go on to the Bearcats and Inani Lagiste. He is just on fire. Another night, 21 points, 9 rebounds last night. But Lander, they were filling up the bucket against Francis Marion. And we saw that Francis Marion team up close a couple times this year. And they are a team, they have a lot of bigs, but they're not really a physical team inside. But, and they're not really a great defensive team. And Lander took advantage of that. They had 5 players with at least 15 points last night. Lander is an offensive juggernaut. They joined Buford and Flagler as the only teams averaging 10 points from 10 shots, 10 field goals from the 3-point line a game. But look out for the Bearcats. They are off to another hot start. Francis Marion had a 3-0 lead, and that was the last time they led. They led Lander led the last 39 minutes of the last 40 minutes of the game. So Lander is off to a great start.
Yeah, that's just crazy. That's the crazy thing about that game is that they had one lead and then Lander just took it and never looked back whatsoever against a very good shooting Francis Marion team, might I add.
That's the thing. They've got a lot of bigs, but those bigs can shoot the ball too, and they do shoot the ball very well. Now we get to the bottom of the conference, and I just put them on the list in the order that they were listed on the Peach Belt schedule. So this is just coincidence that it kind of works out this way. But Georgia College continues to struggle. They had a tough night against Shorter. They trailed by 17 with 8:54 left. Went on a 22-3 run to close it to a 2-point game. But Zaire Green, he's another guy who needs some help. He had 21 points last night. Only 2 Bobcats besides him in double digits. They're the second lowest scoring team in the conference. And where they really struggle, they can't put the ball in the basket. They are 10th in the conference. They are the 10th worst shooting team in the entire nation. There's 286 teams, and only 9 teams shoot worse from the field than Georgia College. So that's something they're going to have to fix.
They shot 39% from the field last night. That's a good night for them. That's the worst part is that's just unacceptable. And they shot 25. They only took 23-point shots the entire night and only made 5 of them.
They're near the bottom in the 3-point shooting too. I think they're 17th from the bottom in 3-point shooting. They've struggled mightily to put the ball in the basket. But credit to them to find a way to get back in because that's a good Shorter team, and that's a team that really you would have thought up 17 with 8 minutes left that there's really not much chance. But they cut it to 2, and they just couldn't get that close. And to a point we were talking about with USC Aiken, they were 24 for 27 from the line, and that'll help you when you're trying to close back up on a team and get back into a game. And that was something that kept them in it. I'm going to skip around. I think we've talked enough about Augusta. They're 0-5 for worst start in 40 years, literally 40 years. I think there's not much more. We've talked about Augusta early on. So let's wrap up with the team. I guess I should have mentioned this 40 minutes ago, but you're sporting your Clayton State Lakers hat.
Yes, sir.
They played Clark Atlanta. Shout out to my friend Teddy Keaton, who's the football coach at Clark Atlanta. But 66-57 win. Aaron Pitts had a good night. DJ Wright had a good night. And you know what'll help you when you're a team that's trying to grow and pick yourself up off the mat after a 7-21 season? They only turned the ball over 8 times last night. And if you're protecting the basketball, it'll make up for a lot of shortcomings on your team, and I think that's a good sign. That's a sign of a team that's coming together, even though they had a lot of new faces there. It seems like Coach Alexander is getting that team together.
Oh yeah, they had a 2-to-1 they did have a plus assist to turnover ratio at 9-8. I got my rebounds and my turnovers or my assists mixed up there, but they played a very clean game last night, a very complete game in which they had 18 fouls, which coming off of last year is
clean.
good for them.
They played clean last night. That's very important. Now they've got their own offensive woes. They are the second worst 3-point shooting team in the country, second worst in the country. So they've got to get better. They're only shooting 20% from the 3-point line. I think that's something that will improve during the season. Sometimes, when you have shooters, they're streaky sometimes, and I think that'll improve. But before we get out of here, let's look at this weekend. There's only 3 games Saturday, but we got some good matchups coming up on Tuesday. Fayetteville State and USC Aiken's a game that I look at. Lander and Winston-Salem State. Can you name any players from Winston-Salem State? I got 2. One of them was not very good. The other is one of the all-time greats. So I'll give them to you. Former New York Knick great Earl Monroe went to Winston-Salem State.
Mm-hmm.
And Stephen A.
Those are 2 very good guys. And the only thing I really know about Winston-Salem State is that their football team plays at Bowman Gray Stadium, which is also a NASCAR track, which is pretty sick.
That is pretty awesome. And then, you got Fayetteville State, USC Aiken, I said is going to be a game. Columbus State making the trip down to Pensacola, which is not that far for them, but that's a UWF team that's pretty good. And then Tuesday slate will end with the border war. USC Beaufort will cross. Now they'll cross the line to go to Savannah State, and it's only about 15 miles. But if you've ever had to drive between Savannah and Beaufort,
that part where it goes from 3 lanes to 2 lanes is a nightmare.
They might have to leave on Monday night for that one because that drive can be a nightmare. But that should be a good game. Well, I think that's all the time we have. We'll be back next week. I would say look for this probably Thursday or Friday next week with the big slate of games Tuesday. But appreciate you joining. Make sure you like and subscribe. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Peach Baskets Pod, and join our Peach Baskets Podcast Facebook page. For Mike Lischio III, I'm Mike Lischio Jr. Thank you and have a great week.
Have a good one, everybody.